All right, we're live. Welcome to another episode of the WP Crowd. We are episode 11, so we are now in the double digits of episodes. Pretty excited about that. Today we're talking about how to sell WordPress and WordPress consulting. But first, let's do introductions. So I'm going to start on my left with Brian.
Hi, I am Brian Rothstein. I'm based in Montreal, and I run a company called Unicio. And since 1997, I've been building websites, doing internet marketing, and speaking at conferences. And I have a book out on content marketing, and that's it.
Cool. Michelle?
Hi everyone, I'm Michelle Butcher. I'm work for WP Security Lock, and then I also have 13 Core.
Left, Brian.
Hi, I am Brian Rothstein. I'm based in Montreal, and I run a company called Unicio. And since 1997, I've been.
Brian, Mark, can you mute yourself? You're like on a little lag.
Sorry, guys. Yep, I think that that should be fixed now. Sorry.
Feel free to mute yourself when you're not talking. It'll help. So, Michelle, why don't you just go ahead and restart with your introduction?
Hi everyone, I'm Michelle. I'm from beautiful Southern Illinois. I work for WP Security Lock, cleaning hacked websites, and then I also have my own development company, 13 Core.
Cool. Ryan, now your turn. Feel free to do your introduction.
Sorry about that, guys. I had the live one started playing in the background is what happened. My name's Ryan Martirato. I'm the Director of Products here at Clear Idea Labs in Sarasota, Florida. We're a mission-driven software development firm, so we basically help companies leverage technology to grow their business, and yeah, that's it. Just glad to be here today, guys.
Glad to have you on. And Shelly.
Hi, I'm Shelly Peacock. I own the Spinbird Group. It's a boutique agency. We focus on WordPress, consulting, design, and I also, for this particular thing, I come from a sales background of about 20 years in the automotive industry, if that helps. So I'm in Middle Tennessee.
Yes, it does. We were talking about this a little bit earlier. Some of us, or I have some sales experience in the past as well, selling cars. And I think Shelly and I were talking offline, what was it, a couple days ago, or yesterday even, about how that kind of relates to what we do now. And that kind of turned into a whole conversation about haggling, which was a pretty interesting conversation, actually. And I'm going to tie this in because one thing that I wanted to bring up, or wanted to have you guys define, because it seems like everyone's defining this differently, is the term, the term value pricing. I've heard a bunch of different people explain it to me in a bunch of different ways. I'm going to start with what I think it is, and it kind of relates to my sales background, which is actually in car sales. Value pricing, or adding value to the price, was the way that we help justify the price. So if you ever go to a car dealership and the person is sitting there explaining every single little feature to you, even like, hey, check out these 17 cup holders. You know that there's cup holders there. You can see the cup holders there, but the reason they're explaining the cup holders to you is because they want to add value. So that way when they tell you the sticker price or whatever price they want to tell you, you think it's a good value. So adding value to your price as a consultant is kind of like that. You kind of oversell or talk about your services, so you can don't have a sticker shock when you finally give someone your price. I've also heard value pricing termed in a non-hourly flat rate kind of thing, like saying instead of I'm $20 an hour, $100 an hour, your project's going to be $5,000, and they say that's value pricing. So how do you guys define it? Rymar, why don't we start with you? How do you guys deal with value pricing at all, especially for your software stuff, and how do you guys define that?
Yeah, so for us, in the grand scheme of things, defining value or adding value to something is essentially the concept of explaining, why it's beneficial for the person that's buying it. And I think the biggest way that we like to show or address value is kind of quantifying the results, right? So we like to start with what the end proposition is, right? What are the person trying to accomplish? What's their end game? What's that end goal of theirs? and then we can relate the value of what we're bringing to that goal. And so when you're relating that to somebody, especially in the context of software or web development, you know, in the cup holder game or in the car sales game, there's features and different things. In the software game, it's the same thing, right? You have different features on a website or different interactive functionality. And so when you can start tying those values back to that person's end goal, that's when you start really like associating that value in our eyes. And that's when, you know, you get people really excited about what you're working on, because then they start to see how that really affects their goal or their vision or whatever they're trying to do with that software. And so for us in the value selling proposition, that's the way we try to build some of that stuff.
How about you, Brian? Coming from a marketing point of view, I know that it's really hard to be like, well, I'm worth this amount of money because I'm going to make you $1 million, because that's the ultimate sell, right? If you could guarantee someone $1 million worth of revenue, they'll probably pay you just about $1 million. So how do you value add your services?
Well, you definitely can't guarantee anything, that's for sure, especially with online marketing. And a lot of people actually call asking us for a guarantee, but we just tell them we can't. As far as pricing, what we'll do is come up with what we think the project is worth and explain to the client what they're going to get for our fee, and just tell them this is it. You're getting this, let's say, amount of value for this price, and you know, if you're good with it, let's do it, and if not, we can change things up. In some cases, the price is too high, and they ask for a discount, and we say, okay, well, we're going to remove value. So if they have 10, let's say, custom features, we'll say, well, we'll lower the price, but you're only going to get 8 out of 10 of those features. And we just move forward that way.
Do you ever add things in, let's say, that you would do anyway, but again, just to bring out the value, like show them that you're worth a little bit more?
So actually, that's a really good question. What happens a lot of the time is we take so many aspects of a site for granted because we throw so much in right from the beginning that a lot of the times we don't actually put that into our proposals, and we do it anyways. And once in a while we realize it and say, uh-oh, maybe we should have put that in. So for example, half the clients we have ask for a scrolling banner on their homepage, and we do that anyways, and a lot of them think, oh, that's such a big deal, how much do I have to pay for that? And we're like, no, that's included anyway, so don't worry about it. We're kind of like not very pushy, to be honest. I know that we don't have really salespeople here, where you speak directly to the programmers and designers and the marketing people. So, and I only have a few people working on my team, and there's no sales. So we don't try to throw in all the different features like you're talking about, the cup holders for a car and so on. Maybe to our detriment, maybe we should be doing it more, but we don't.
How about you, Michelle and Shelly? You guys are both consultants, kind of doing your own thing. Well, mainly Shelly. I know, Michelle, you kind of do other stuff too, but Shelly, you're a consultant full-time. What about you? Do you ever add stuff into your proposals that you probably would do anyway? Do you find that helps with adding value? You're also muted, so you might want to unmute yourself. Shelly, you're muted.
Still muted.
All right, Michelle, your turn.
Now can you hear me?
Yes. This has just been like the worst show ever so far. I'm sorry to all the viewers.
As far as
Technical difficulties up the butt today. Shelly, your turn.
Okay. What I've started doing with my proposals, and I've put out 5 this week, have been instead of here's my base website price, then we're going to add this, and we're going to add that, then we're going to blah blah. Now I'm doing a lot like what Brian said, the scrolling banner, and the absolute details are going into blocks with value-added pricing. I don't ever talk budget with the client to start with, because from sales training, and to clarify, I didn't sell cars, I sold to car dealers, which is even 10,000 times harder. But what we did, we never ever talked budget. We got to the point where they fell in love with the possibility, and then the money became something they figured out how to come up with, as opposed to the other way around. so many beginning designers and developers and people just getting in, the very first question is, what is your budget? Well, they're thinking, okay, I've got rent, I've got, blah, blah, my budget's $500, but I want you to build eBay. Well, you kind of shut yourself off from any dialogue at that point. So what I've started doing, and it's working really well, are the blocks in the proposal. Each block has what it does and the price, and what it does and the price. And then if the total is more than they can handle, then we start taking away those blocks. Well, maybe we don't need for it to do this right now. And it's been very, very effective.
Can I add something to that?
Yeah.
So I used to do things that way, especially when I was a freelancer. And what I discovered was a lot of people would say yes, 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 until the very end when they got the proposal with the price and said, oh, no, 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 it's completely, night and day in terms of what they're willing to spend on their sites or on the marketing work. And so we've actually changed things a lot here. We go through a 20-minute consultation with everyone who calls. We'll see what they want, figure out their needs, and right then and there say, what's your estimated budget range? And sometimes they'll say, well, I don't know. And then we say, okay, it's 10,000. And people say, oh, no, 10,000, I'm not ready to spend that. And we say, okay, well, then what's your budget range? Okay, well, I was thinking maybe 2,000 to 3,000. It's like, okay, well, for that price, out of all the things we just discussed, here's what I can offer you. And then move forward from there. So it's kind of like a red flag right from the beginning if they're not willing to spend a certain amount for everything that they're asking for. And it saves a lot of time.
It's a good point. I mean, I used to do a lot of consulting work, and it was the same thing. It's kind of a catch-22. You don't know what you're going to deal with, and I never wanted to put 2 hours into a proposal if I knew that the proposal was just going to come back with a no, way too much money. So, but I never liked asking the budget question either, because I felt like that would automatically put a value on, or like a monetary value on something that they might not see. Like, they're gonna have this mindset, right? Like, they have a dollar amount, and they say, this is what I think this is valued at, and at that mindset, it's gonna be harder to convince them that the value is greater, because they're already saying, okay, you need to build a website.
And you set a threshold, right? When you do that, you're setting like a threshold. You're setting a high level marker in that instance when you start talking about price in that context. A lot of sales training programs talk about like options-based selling and doing a lot like what you're talking about, Shelly, and breaking down the proposal into these little elements that then people can pick and choose and arrange, and you give excuse me, multiple options to a buyer. But there's a lot of different ways when it comes to that proposal, and I think the biggest way is just making sure that you really address the needs of what the person is trying to do, right? A lot of times when it comes to software and websites, and everybody thinks they want this big thing, right? They want a mobile app, and they want beautifully responsive, and they want this really intricate, beautiful thing, but they don't really understand, right? Because that's what the world tells them to do, because that's what everyone's telling, because all the big boys are doing this thing, and so everybody thinks that their little website has to have all these features. And so I think it becomes real important for us as consultants and as people working in the space to kind of guide the people into the right technology, into those right services, and kind of take that educational role and kind of show somebody not necessarily that they don't need those things, but why they might need them maybe later down the road. Why maybe they don't need such social integrations built in early off the bat, or why they don't need a really custom interface that might take a lot of money versus doing something simple to get off the ground and getting their website moving first, and then building some traction behind something before they start building this real custom process. And so I think when we start talking about pricing and adding value and how we offer and sell our services, that stuff comes into play, because when you can get somebody real excited about the things you're selling, they'll pay the money for it, right? They'll pay you what it's worth and what that thing is worth. You just have to convince them it's worth that. And to do that, you really have to make sure you're hitting home on their specific needs and what they're trying to accomplish. And a lot of times we get into that, oh, we can do this, we can do that, especially with WordPress. Especially if you're just a plugin junkie that just likes to add stuff, it's real easy to just, yeah, we can do that, we can do that. but is that what they really need? You know, and I think that needs-based selling, when you mix some options, is the best. You know, give them some options with that type of approach.
Yeah, I can certainly speak to that. I talk people out of things all day long. Like literally, people call and say, "I need a Twitter." It's like, okay, you don't need a Twitter. You know, like, are you going to update it constantly? Oh, I have to
Do,
update one of those?
do you
Right.
do
You
you
know,
even use the Twitter that exists now effectively? You know, like there's a Twitter
right,
now. Do
right.
you even know how to use that one? What are you going to build your own for?
Right, and some of them, some clients insist on having it, and then they're like, "Hey," the first tweet, of course, is, "Hey, we're on Twitter," and the second one is, "We have a Christmas special," and then that's it. It just sits there forever, and they never use it. And then I
Yeah.
tell them, "You see, it was a waste of time." Just one point, speaking to what Shelly was saying before, if like I guess with respect to breaking down the pricing, you know, if people watching are thinking, oh, well, maybe I should do what Shelly did and break everything down by price for every feature, we know what we charge for our clients. Like we have basically almost every service that we offer has a fixed price, and we know what we want for it. And I think that I guess this also addresses what Roy was saying. If you have to try and convince somebody, like if you're working hard to convince somebody to come on as a client, you don't want them as a client. Like they should know right from the beginning the value you're bringing to the table. And we actually turn down the vast majority of people who call us. And I know that people in sales always cringe. You know, my business colleagues always freak out when I tell them that. But we're very, very picky about the clients that we want, and we want to stay as a boutique agency. And there's no point in taking on clients who are just going to give you a hard time because from the beginning they weren't too excited about your pricing and they don't necessarily realize the value that you bring to the table. So we know what we're going to price, what our prices are, what we're going to charge, and if they're not ready to spend it, then that's okay. They can go somewhere else. And sometimes we even make recommendations. A lot of people call thinking they're going to hire a company like ours and realize that really they can afford a freelancer, or that they don't need all the bells and whistles, but they insist on it, and I say, okay, go to a freelancer. They'll do it for a lot cheaper, and take your chances there. And that actually freelancing is a topic for another day.
Yeah, whole nother day. No, it brings up a lot of good points, and the whole and I've dealt with this quite often is pushing for that client to sell the client, and pushing because especially when they're haggling, and this is something that we talked about yesterday, kind of offline, was haggling, and I just find it very annoying because it's maybe I didn't do a good job of talking about the value of my services, but if you're gonna come and haggle me for $500 off the price, most likely you're gonna want every single thing for free that I don't want to give you for free anyway. And that's kind of been my experience, is that as soon as someone starts haggling hard with your price, and then you give in, you're like, you know what, okay, that's fair, or maybe even you're unhappy with the price, but maybe you're in a financial bind where you kind of need the cash flow, which I know I've been in that situation. I know a lot of consultants kind of can relate to that. And so you end up with a client that probably is not going to finish in a month. They're probably going to take 6 months, and you're probably not going to see any more money out of them, and they're just going to be a pain in the butt the whole way through.
Well, I think that's an important thing. Like if we're talking about selling WordPress and doing consulting work, it's exactly that. That like picking the right customers. Brian, you mentioned it a little bit, but Roy, you're getting closer into it. But turning people down, or like not taking that $1,500 website customer when you're just starting out, or that $2,000, $3,000 low level, like, oh yeah, I can do that in a weekend. Excuse me. But the customer then expects everything that you're doing for the other sites, and so like yeah, you can get into that chasing the dollar moment, especially when you're starting out, where you just need that commission, and you start taking on these clients, and those guys end up being terrible for you because, first of all, like, they're probably not going to be happy, and so they're not going to give you a good testimonial. Typically the people who like lowball you or really negotiate down on price never end up happy with what they get anyway, and so it's hard to like take that on, or to know that, or to actually be able to do that in those environments, right? Because when you're sitting across from somebody and taking that website is the difference between you paying your rent or not that month, it's hard to like not take the deal. But once you get to the point where you can, get away from those situations and you can not have to take every client that comes your way, things can start getting a little better, and you can start controlling and dictating those value propositions, and it gets a little easier, to set yourself above the competition and make those differentiations.
I think the first time I said no to a client and I could afford to say no to a client was like one of the best feelings I've ever had in my life. Like being able to just be like, you know what? Yeah, I could use the money, but I don't need it. So no, I know you're going to be a bad client. So straight up, I don't want to deal with you. And I think I might have offered some other people in return, saying, hey, check out these other freelancers. They might be able to help you out. But working towards that first no was a pain in the butt. But once I got there, it was fantastic. And I think, you got to just keep on moving forward from there. Because yeah, you have to be able to say no. It's super critical, and you'll find that you get better clients. And yeah, sometimes you will have to budge a little bit on your pricing, but sometimes if you find that right client, it'll be worth it. I've budged pricing for existing clients, and they keep on coming back to me, and they'll refer me more people. So that $500 I might have taken off one website, I've made up threefold on other work they've given me, on clients they've brought to me, and I've charged full price for. So there's a fine line between working hard for that one customer versus just giving good customer service to the good customers you already have, and making up that extra money elsewhere if you need to.
Right, and to bring this back to WordPress, a lot of people call and say, well, isn't WordPress free? And I say, yeah, out of the box it's free, but you're paying us to customize it, and there's that's a whole different ball game. And the explanation of the customization and the added value you bring to the table because of the customization usually goes down pretty well. Like, people will understand. And if they don't understand, we say, well, go install it, try it, and call us back in a few days when you realize that it's not that easy to get anything fancy, or getting it to look the way you want it to look on your own without spending a lot of time learning the system.
Yeah, I mean, that kind of ties back into our value conversation, where you really do have to try hard, because again, as soon as someone says they have a budget or they think they know anything about WordPress, there's misconceptions, and they have this kind of thought about what it is and how easy it is. And I mean, half the battle is just telling them how not easy it is, and how confusing it can be to set that all up.
That goes back to the concept of being that educator role in our relationship with our consumers. Most of the time, we become a teacher, and it becomes important for us to educate and explain the concepts and a lot of these things. And that's probably the hardest part, is that everybody hears, oh, WordPress is so easy, WordPress is free, it's open source, it powers 20-something% of the internet, and so then everybody just thinks that it's this thing that they can go and flip on. And so, sometimes it is that easy, and if you want to get your hands dirty, you can go in and you can figure some cool things out. And that's some of the interesting things that WordPress presents, is the ability for people to go in and just kind of create on their own. But it does also present these other situations where you can crash your site and not know what you're doing and not be able to get in. You could lock yourself out of your admin panel. There's so many other little things and nuances, and so it becomes kind of important for people to understand that, yeah, they've got the keys to the castle, and they're getting something that they can play with on their end, and they can customize and manage on the front end. But it becomes really important for us to kind of be there and show them, you're still going to need some guidance. You're still going to need some back-end support. You're still going to probably need, those occasional, oh my God, I have an emergency, who do I call kind of moments. And that's where it's good to have a consultant or a developer on hand. And I think that there's a space in the WordPress world for people to kind of take on that very consultative and build really strong relationships with their customers in that way, in that educational mentor-mentee kind of relationship.
So we talk a lot about this kind of ties into, again, back to value and back to everything. And just in our last 5 minutes here, we talk about selling WordPress. We talk about value add. What are some things, Michelle, that you may have learned through the years that might have added to your value? Let's say if you're going after a client right now.
One of the biggest things that I have found that helps is showing the value of what sets yourself apart from your competitors as well. Like especially when it comes to the malware removal. One of the biggest things that we do that a lot of the other companies don't do is we go through file by file instead of running scripts. Some companies, when they clean sites, they run a script, take out all the like base 64 code and then turn it back without really looking. And I've even seen with on the designers and developers, everyone has a niche on what they like to do and what sets them apart. And really honing in on that to show value seems to work well for me.
Yeah, I think setting yourself apart is definitely a great thing to use, especially when you're talking about a specific role that you might play in marketing or security, whatever it might be. Um, what are some things you guys have taken on as far as learning goes to help add value? Because for me, it's always been, I added value by learning JavaScript in and out. So now I can do a lot of cool JavaScript stuff, and I could do a lot of like API driven applications with Angular and all that. And I find that people are now finding me because of that, and again, that's all value add that I can offer to my clients. So what are some things you guys have learned?
I think the biggest thing in the context of, and I don't mean to, sorry, I don't mean to interrupt here or jump right in, but managing those expectations is probably the biggest thing in all of this context, right? And so anytime you can like make sure that you and your customer are on the same page and that those expectations are being managed properly and set, in a way that are realistic and attainable with the client ahead of time, that eliminates a lot of what happens or a lot of the miscommunications in the web world and in the development and the software world. Because a lot of times what happens is just a lack of communication or the lack of understanding of what's going to take place or how they're going to take place. So if there's anything that I've learned over the years of just managing some of these projects or being a freelancer and now in the world of software development is that if you can just manage those expectations and be on the same page all the time with the people who are, first of all, responsible with the success of the project, and second of all, the people who are paying for and invested in the project itself, then really the rest of it becomes secondary in that context, because from there you're all on the same page and the communication stays open and really it's a lot easier to do all of the other things that we've talked about in that context.
Very true. Managing expectations is a huge thing with consulting, and I find that it's not even easy because you can try your best and clients will still demand, and it's not something that comes easily. How about you, Brian? What's something that you've learned, or maybe your team has learned, that has added value to your services?
Well, we learned this accidentally, actually. We teach. We've been teaching. So I've been training SEO. I've been training people on SEO since the early 2000s. And it used to take about 2-3 hours. I'd do it over the phone and literally teach people the basics of SEO to basically anybody around the world. Eventually, the workshop got bigger and bigger and bigger, and I started getting hired and flying all around the world to work with different companies. And eventually I brought it in-house where I would open it up and have like a workshop day, and people would come to the workshop from different companies on that day. And then we spread it to like, intro to social media and intro to WordPress and so on. And so now we have about 25 courses, and what we've learned is by creating the courses and updating them on a consistent basis, we're able to stay right at the front of the wave of any new technology. Like something new comes up, and we're learning about it, we're teaching people, and we can actually tell people who call, like when they say, like, how modern will my website be? We say, well, actually, we teach it, so we have to stay at the front of things. We have to stay on, knowing what's up to date, what the latest trends are, and implementing the correct ones. And that actually works very well. People love hearing that.
Yeah, I'd say for just in closing here, for any consultants that are watching now or are going to be watching, getting Brian kind of started this way, but I did this too, is it's just getting your name out there is sometimes very, very helpful. I know most of you have been at WordCamps, so I would say take your chance. Try to speak at a WordCamp. Try to speak at 2 WordCamps. Try to speak at meetup groups. You can one of the biggest things that has helped me with my value has actually just been my name, and just getting my name out there as much as possible. So getting out there, talking at conferences, talking at meetups, and getting people to know who I am. Aside from learning code and SEO and all that, just putting my name out there as an expert or whatever it may be has been very, very helpful. And I think a lot of people tend to not want to, let's say, offer to speak at a WordCamp because they're nervous or whatever. But as a consultant, I think there's almost no better way to honestly jumpstart a little bit of a career, because you get your name out there, you're going to meet people that you've never met before, and it offers networking capabilities. WordCamp is a whole nother conversation for another day, but I'd say that definitely it's a good way to, again, help selling yourself as a consultant, is getting your name out there, and that's one easy way to, without learning new code or without learning anything complicated, it's kind of an easy way to kind of help out your own business. So that's all the time we have for today. Thank you guys for being on, and I'll see you guys next week.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks.